pages here, something like a Word document. Okay. All right, guys. So I do want to actually say something also. You know, we're spending a lot of time about course logistics, but that's okay. We're still at the beginning of the semester. I will not be posting notes. So I've been thinking about this idea of kind of assessing you, and I've taught online courses before, but I've never done kind of an open book kind of assessment. And this semester, I want to try that. So I want to try to make all the quizzes, hopefully. Of course, if anything changes, I'll let you know. But I want to try to make all the quizzes kind of open book. There are going to be a good number of them. So I'm not going to give you a lot of time. And also, I'm not going to be posting notes. So the idea behind that is for you to kind of watch those YouTube videos. Hopefully, you're taking notes now, so you don't have to watch them again. But the idea is you watch those videos and you write your own notes, and that's going to be part of the learning. So if I post notes and then I make it open notes and then you look at my notes and you have the answer there, then that makes it not very, I mean, the learning experience might be, you know, easy for you, but it wouldn't kind of contain a lot of learning. So part of the learning, I want it to be that, you know, you watch those videos, you write your own notes. As you've seen in today's quiz, everything that I'm going to ask you about is something that we will cover. So I'm not going to ask you kind of tricky questions. Everything that's going to be stuff that we cover, but I do want you to kind of extract those notes from those videos. You either do that now or maybe, you know, after you can watch the videos again. Does that make sense, guys? Okay, so some questions. The quiz answers, we can do that. So after I grade the quiz, I can show you the answers. Post your notes after the quizzes. I'm not sure. I'll think about that. So I'll think about that. The problem is the exams are going to be also open notes. So yeah, I mean, I think it's fair. I think it's a good system. I think I would like it if I was a student. I don't think, maybe some of you will not love what I'm doing, but to me as a kind of an educator, that kind of makes sense. So if you have, you know, if you have suggestions or if you want to share your thoughts, you can email me and I'll be happy to kind of listen to you. All right, where did this go? For some reason, can you still guys hear me fine? Everything is good? My Zoom changed a little bit. Okay, all right.
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Okay, guys, so let's talk about Python. So when you install Python, let's say, and most likely you do have Python, it comes with actually two things, so two main components. We have the first thing that's called Python interpreter. So Python interpreter is essentially the piece of code. It's a piece of software that interprets the Python code. So for example, if you write Python, maybe print, you know, hello world, like that. And if you run this, if you execute this one, you need the Python interpreter to execute that. So when you have Python, that means we have the Python interpreter. That's kind of the first component. But there's a second component that you have to have, and that's essentially the packages or libraries. For example, let's say you want to scrape the web. So maybe we'll do some of that in this course, because sometimes scraping and putting in a database is a very good actually application of using databases. So let's say you want to scrape the web for some information, whether that would be temperatures in some areas, or maybe reviews for restaurants, or maybe kind of financial data, maybe stock values for some kind of securities. So that means you need to use a package. You don't have to, but a good way would be to use a package or a library that allows you to scrape the web. So there's one called Beautiful Soup. There's another one called Selenium. Let's say you install that Selenium and you decide to use it. So there's a command that allows you to install packages in your kind of Python. So the set of packages and libraries that you have will keep increasing because, as you use Python, you will kind of be installing packages. And of course, because you have that package, you can use it. So you can import that package. So you can say import kind of package name goes here, and then you can use it. So because you're importing it, you can, for example, say write code here, and write code to scrape the web. Okay, you can do that. Now you can write code to scrape the web because I imported that package that allows me to scrape the web. So it's actually pretty similar to the other things that you've seen like Java. If you want to use a package, you have to import it. And if the package is not already in the set of packages that you have, then you want to install it. We can talk about that. The problem with this, or the minor kind of problem that could potentially happen, is that let's say you have two projects. One of them is using a set of packages, and another one is using a set of packages, and there's conflict. So maybe you have one project that uses an old version of Selenium. Again, Selenium is a package. Someone is suggesting that we can zoom in. Okay, so let's see. Let's do that. Let me kind of do this too. Okay. So let's say that one of your projects is using an old version of Selenium. And let's say after a few years, you decided to create another project, but right now Selenium has been updated and you want to use the new version of Selenium. Now that's a problem because you may install the new version of Selenium, and for your old project that uses the old version of Selenium, it might be different syntax. So a lot of the times when you have a new version of a package or a library, they have different syntax. That's very actually common. And that means your first project is going to break. So right now your new project is going to work, but your first project is going to break. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Do you understand the problem? The problem is you have multiple projects, they have packages, and sometimes you're using the same package, but different version, and there will be conflict because you can't have many packages that have the same versions, because when you say import Selenium, it needs to know which version of Selenium. So you should have only one Selenium here. Now you can't have the most updated version if you're using the older one. So again, make sure that you're understanding what I'm saying. And if you have any questions, ask me. So what do you do in that case? You create kind of another Python, essentially. You say, well, actually, for each project, I want to have an entire Python. And this is what we do, and this is how we do it, and this is the good practice. This is how it should be done in Python. So let's say after a few years, you decide to create a new project. Okay. Now, if you do that, what you would do is you would create a new Python with the packages and the libraries that come with it, and then you can change that as much as you want, because each project is going to have its own Python. Okay, guys. So this idea of own Python is called virtual environment. So you're going to create a virtual environment, and this virtual environment is going to contain the same thing, Python interpreter, and also it's going to contain, packages and libraries that are only for this new project. So you can have, for example, I have many projects. I have maybe 50 projects on my computer, 50 Python projects. Some of them are very big. So that means I have 50 virtual environments, and that's fine. That's the way to do it. And of course, another advantage of this is once you kind of delete this project, let's say you decide to kind of get rid of that project, you simply get rid of the project, essentially the Python files, and you also get rid of the virtual environment because you're not using it anymore. So as you can see, it's a very nice way of kind of writing code in Python. It's a very kind of organized way.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. I think you can raise your hand next time, Luai, but you can ask now. I mean, now it's fine.
Okay.
But I see I can see when you guys raise your hands, I can see that. So,
Okay.
but go ahead.
So just to sum up what you're saying that the issue is when you have multiple projects, and for those projects, you have to use packages, and for each one of those projects, the version of the package is going to be different because it has to know
Might
which
be different.
might be
No,
different.
it doesn't have to be. It might be. For example, you might. So here, for example, this project, I created that in 2018, and it uses Selenium maybe 1.5. But then when you created another project in 2021, there was a newer version, and you said, well, let me do that. Let me go with the newer version. Newer means hopefully better, faster, and you used Selenium 2.4. So this one has Selenium 2.4, this one has Selenium 1.5, but they don't have to. I mean, this one can still use 1.5 or 1.5, it can. That's perfectly fine. But the idea is you can't have in one kind of environment, you can't have both 1.5 and 2.4. So if you decide to create another project and connect it to this virtual environment, that's going to be a problem, because you have to update the Selenium here, which might break the code that you wrote in 2018. Is that good, Luai?
Oh yeah, so you're just saying that because of what could happen with having to use like different versions for each of the packages, that's the dilemma that you were talking about, and that if you had to update the previous one, like the project you made, if you were to update it to like 2.7 or something, it would break the code.
Yes, it might break the code because the syntax might be different. Yeah. And this is a big problem. I mean, it doesn't seem big maybe to you now, but it's actually very big because you have different projects. There are different versions and you use many packages. I mean, that's one of the nice things about Python is that it has a package for everything. It has packages for everything. And because of that, you typically have many packages in your project, and typically, again, the new package will break the old package. I'm trying to kind of do multitask here. I'm not very good at multitasking. I'm trying to read the chat and also explain, and I'm not very good at that. So let me kind of pause. Let me stop talking and look at the chat window. So Ishan is saying, do libraries usually have backwards compatibility? No, that's not typically common. So Benjamin's saying not really. And he's right. You don't. So when there's a new version of Selenium, say 2.4, most likely the old code that works for 1.5 does not work for 2.4, actually. That's pretty common. And there is no such, I mean, backward compatibility is difficult in code. Backward compatibility is much easier in hardware, and it's very difficult in code, because when you say backward compatibility, that means you want the old code to work, which means that your new code has to be entirely different, and that's going to make the code very kind of complicated. So some things might be kind of backward compatible, but at some point it can't. I mean, after a few versions, it just can't. Okay, guys, do you have any questions about any of that? Okay, so Najaf. Okay, guys. So I would say wait for me to post the YouTube video. So for now, like I said on Wednesday last week, you get a 30-day evaluation period. So you can use that. Use that for 1 week, 2 weeks. That's perfectly fine. And within that 1 week or 2 weeks, contact me. Try to Google things. Send me an email. I'll post the YouTube about kind of PyCharm, and you can activate it then. So for now, just evaluate it for 30 days, and it should work. Okay, guys. So don't worry too much about activating it now. You can just evaluate it for 30 days, and you can just Google some stuff and then ask me. And again, I'll post the short video that we did last week about activation. Okay, guys, do you have any other questions about Python and this idea of virtual environments? So this is a virtual environment. All right, so we have a question here. What does it mean to create a separate virtual environment? Is it separate software? How is it isolated? Yes, it's a separate folder. So it would be a folder that contains a Python interpreter and also packages and libraries. And it would be separate. It's a separate folder that is connected to a single project, hopefully, if you're doing things right. And that's how you do it. That's how you do it, okay? Okay, any other questions? So it's actually an environment. I mean, you can think of it as an environment, not a virtual. You see, the word virtual can be confusing because virtual might mean like a fake or a pseudo environment. It's really not a virtual or not a pseudo. It's actually an environment. It's just another environment. So by creating a new environment, you keep the old packages working. Yeah, so again, guys, so you have a project here, and this one is connected to this virtual environment, and this one has its own packages. Let's say you create a new project, you create a new virtual environment, and you connect this virtual environment to this project. So there's no way that you're going to break this project because this project with its virtual environment is entirely kind of separated from this project with its virtual environment. So each project has a virtual environment, and there's no way that this one's going to break this one. They're isolated, they're separated, they're independent. And that way, you know, again, code is not gonna break just kind of suddenly. Okay, guys, do you have any questions about this? Okay, let's see. All right, so I'm gonna actually go to PyCharm. I'm gonna start PyCharm, and I'm gonna what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna actually stop the recording, then start the recording, because I want to call this section kind of Python interpreters. And then I want to go to creating your first project in Python. But do you guys have any questions about Python interpreters? More questions? Excuse me, Python virtual environments. So I'm going to call this Python virtual environments. And the second section is going to be creating your first project in Python. Any questions about Python virtual environments? Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording, then start again.